Alrighty. Hello. Thank you so much for clicking on episode 2 of my new podcast series, Lessons After My Quarter Life Crisis, which is still a working title, but I do like it. It is working. It does really exude kind of what I'm trying to achieve here, which if you haven't watched episode 1, please do. I do wonder how you found episode 2 if you didn't watch episode 1, but regardless, I'm very happy and appreciative that you're here, so thank you. This is episode 2 of this new series I'm trying to do, which is really all about sharing my experiences and storytelling in a way where I have really kind of come to believe that this is the greatest gift we can offer each other is our experiences, is our stories. And I think through sharing anything in general, it's a way for us to feel connected, and it's a way that makes us feel a little less alone in this world and kind of maybe what we're experiencing, because very rarely are our experiences uniquely ours, and someone out there in the world has gone through what you're going through, or they will be going through what you're currently going through, if that makes sense. And I think the only way we can kind of feel a little less alone is by talking about it, by sharing it. And so that is what I'm trying to achieve in this podcast series. And I think just after the past year, it's just been really crazy for me. I feel like I've done a lot of internal work, and I feel like I've grown and kind of become, I don't want to say a new person, because I feel like that's kind of cliche to say, but I do feel like I'm a different person. I'm a different version of myself, a grown version, an aged version. No, that didn't come out right. But I do feel like I've changed. I do feel like my perspective on life, my values have definitely changed. And I just see the world very differently now. And I think it was a very tough year, and I recognize that I'm still probably processing what all happened last year. But, I feel like I'm in a good place to kind of start talking about things, start sharing how I feel. And maybe there's no end game solution or realization, but I think just talking about it, I feel like I'm in a better place to start talking about certain things. And so that is what we're going to do. But to kick off this episode, I do want to say thank you to everybody who has watched the first episode, which did a lot more than I thought it was going to. It has 6 views, which I was like, what? That is wild. That is wild. And I'm so appreciative, because honestly, I thought it was going to get none, because it's a 38-minute video. But I got 6 views, and I was like, what the heck? That is amazing. And I started posting highlights on TikTok, which if you're not following me on TikTok, please do. And those clips did really well, and I doubled my followers. Now I have 60 something followers, which is amazing. It's amazing. I was like, what the heck? This has happened over the past few days. So I'm still on that high of excitement of oh wow, people like what I have to say. And so it feels good. And so I definitely want to kick off this second video with a huge thank you, and just leading and starting with gratitude and appreciation, because it really means a lot. And so thank you. Thank you. But in today's episode, if you couldn't tell by the title, we're going to be talking about how it's been a year since I've taken a break from social media, which in my head, I'm still trying to fathom that it's been over a year. And I know it's kind of a little, is ironic the right word? Because I'm on TikTok and YouTube and whatever platform I may or may not put the podcast version of this on. But I guess the major social media platforms, the one where you're personally following people that you know, is what I'm kind of referring to. So Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. Those are the platforms I'm talking about. And I've kind of removed myself from them, and it's been a year. So I think I definitely have learned a lot from it. I think overall it's been a really positive thing for me, both mentally and emotionally. It's been really beneficial for me to do. And I kind of just want to talk and share about how, kind of reflecting a year later, how I feel about it. And I don't know, maybe answer the question at the end of whether or not I think I'll come back to social media. It is a running joke or running question that I have with some of my friends down here in Los Angeles, my close friends, which poses the question of whether or not I'm going to make a return. We'll see. We'll find out at the end of this video or podcast. End of this episode. There we go. Sums up both of them. So to kind of give some context, so back in 2020, obviously it was 2020, back in April of 2020, I deleted Instagram off my phone. That is how all this has started. I deleted Instagram off my phone, and I was doing like a little movie night. It was like a FaceTime movie night with my best friend. And at the end of it, I was like, you know what? I'm deleting it. I'm deleting Instagram. Because, if you can imagine, April 2020 was only a few months after I got broken up with. So I was checking up on my ex like I had nothing else better to do in the world. And I can laugh about it now because I think it's so much time I wasted checking up on him on social media, honestly. It's just kind of something I have to laugh at now. But it happened. I get it. It happened. It was a natural thing. I did it and did it for a reason. But yeah, I deleted Instagram largely because I realized how much time I was spending checking up on my ex. And I think at first it started off with just checking to see if our photos were still on his account. Like, did he delete them? Like, did he just like delete our photos that we had over the past 4 years, or was I still there? Then it grew to, oh, we got a new follower. Who is it? Oh, he's following someone else. Who is it? AKA, is it a guy? And if it is a guy, who? And I would just do that periodically throughout the day. And then I was like, okay, this is not okay. And like I knew, I was like, this is not a good use of my time. And then it kind of grew to me checking up on our mutual friends and seeing their stories and seeing whether or not they posted anything about him. And kind of the same thing. I was doing it periodically throughout the day. And I was like, this is really not a good time. And it's also not making me feel better because in both checking up on his follower count and checking up on our mutual friends to see if they posted anything, if there was nothing, I didn't really feel relieved. Like, I really didn't feel like, great, I can go to sleep at night, I can carry on about my day. I didn't feel that. And then secondly, if they did post something or if the follower count did change, that would just signal an immense amount of stress, immense amount of anxiety, and also a lot of sadness and pain all at once. And I was like, this is not good. Like, this is just not a good feeling. This in no way benefits me now. And it was really hard to navigate of me logically knowing that. But my emotional heart was taking control over my hands and my thumbs as I was swiping through things and clicking things and zooming in on stuff. And it became a thing. It was a lot. It was a thing. I understand. I understand. And I'm sure many of us at home or wherever you're listening to this know what I'm talking about. And so that was really what kind of drove me to, well, first I blocked my ex, but then that really didn't change anything because I would still unblock him just to see if the follower account changed. And now that I blocked him and he was a private account, now I couldn't, get the satisfaction of searching who it was that, followed him or he followed, all that stuff. And so that was really not a great experience. And so, I quickly, shortly after blocking him, deleted the app off my phone. And I think that kind of just then grew to being like, okay, Instagram was really the only app that I used daily. And so then now I can kind of get rid of Twitter. Now I can get rid of Facebook. And I'll talk more about LinkedIn later on, but eventually I kind of removed myself from LinkedIn as well. And that's really kind of the start and kind of the background gist of why I deleted social media. And that's basically it. I don't know why there's a dramatic pause. But I guess to kind of just openly talk about how I feel about being off of social media for a bit. Let's see, how do I really feel? I haven't really, internally I've asked myself this question, but now to talk about it verbally is kind of a different thing. I think initially, and this is kind of like a random thought, is that I kind of started to really like being an enigma in a sense where I knew and I understood that people no longer knew what I was up to because I wasn't posting anything, and I kind of removed this social media presence, especially during the quarantine. No one's really physically seeing me because we're not out and about. But I really kind of grew to enjoy this idea that, oh, people don't know what I'm up to. And I think in a way at first it was just more so because I was dealing with a breakup that I just wanted to like be alone. I just wanted to be on my own island and just I had a lot of things I needed to deal with on my own. And so I didn't want anybody to see me in this state in general. But I think as more time apart from social media, I kind of really started liking this idea that like really no one knows what I'm up to. And it felt really good. It felt really nice because I think some of the things I learned off of being, kind of removing myself from social media were a few things. One of them was that the people who mattered knew what I was up to. My close circle of friends knew where I was at in life. And to me, that felt more significant and more special, having that kind of be the dynamic that, if there's something great happening in my life, I'm going to text these certain people or text this very specific group chat that this happened to me instead of posting about it like maybe I normally would have, so that way everyone could see it, including my, close friends. And I understand there's like the close friends thing on like social medias now, but for whatever reason, to me, I like the act of finding their names or calling them or FaceTiming them and telling them the good news versus kind of like posting about it. And so that's something I noticed, that kind of, part of this like whole enigma journey that I was going on. And the other thing on the flip side, I also kind of realized who was, how do I say this in a way that's good? I think on the flip side, this is how I'm going to phrase it. I think I realized who were my close friends and kind of like who I really, this is going to sound really bad, but I'm just going to say it, who I really cared about in terms of like knowing what they're doing with their lives. Because before, when I was on social media, I would just passively see what people were up to, and I didn't really have any other desire or urge to like check in with people, reach out to people, because I saw what they were doing. Like, oh, you went to Hawaii, cool, great. Or, oh, you're at home doing this, awesome. Oh, you went to the beach, great, that's fun. I just had no desire to further ask questions. Maybe if there was something super exciting, I would comment, but otherwise I just like, oh, okay, yeah, I know what they're up to, like, don't really need to reach out to them. And I think removing myself from social media, it made me realize like who I was genuinely curious about what they're up to. And a lot of the times it was my close circle of friends, like, hey, what are you up to? But other times it was other people that maybe I hadn't talked to in a while, but I really was curious, genuinely curious to know, oh, I wonder how they're doing. And especially during quarantine, I think we can all kind of agree that our relationships and our perspective on relationships and how much energy we put into them has really changed. And I think it paired really nicely that the quarantining and the pandemic and the removing of social media really made me review or shift my perspective, there we go, and how I view my relationships with people in a way that I feel like it's bettered them in a lot of ways, because I feel really close to the people that I care about and the people that are what I would consider to be a part of my inner circle. And I don't know, I just feel like I'm also a better friend because I'm now genuinely reaching out to people that I care about and all that. So that's something that I noticed. And then I guess on the flip side of that, like the vice versa, like the not so great side, is that I realized who isn't doing the same for me. And I say this lightly because it's a pandemic and everybody's kind of mourning and processing and grieving in their own way. So I say it really lightly when I realize that not everyone's going to reach out to everybody. Like, it's unrealistic, and I don't necessarily have that expectation. But it is something I've noted of people who are checking in with me, wondering what I'm up to, or wanting to catch up, wanting to, just kind of see how I'm doing. And I've noticed that. And, the downside, and maybe this will be a topic for another video, of, people I thought maybe would care about my life, and they haven't reached out to me. How do I feel about that? But that's maybe I could literally talk about friendships as a whole other video, so maybe I'll write that down. But that was also something that I noticed in kind of this time away from social media. And Yeah, so I think there's good and bads, right? But I really kind of like this idea of being an enigma. It's been kind of a vibe. It's kind of been like a nice little thing about me, and I don't know. I think there's a lot of, to me, there's more good than the bad. Obviously the bad of realizing that certain people aren't checking in with me. It's not the greatest things, but I think there's a lot more good that came out of me kind of initially taking a step away from social media. Um, I think about whether or not I view social media as toxic, because I know that's kind of like a trending topic, right? Like social media is toxic, and people have their opinions on that. And to give my opinion, to contribute to the pot of opinions on that, I don't think social media is inherently toxic. Like I don't think it's a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing to have been created, because honestly, there's so much good in it, right? There's a lot of good things that have benefited from. Excuse me. There's a lot of good things that have come out of social media. It now connects us on different time zones, different states, different countries, and so it connects us in a way where we weren't able to, right? The only way we could connect to people way back when was just how close we physically were to one another, and now it can connect us all around. And I think there's that is just so simple, but such an amazing thing. Where I think about, if I didn't have a phone, if I couldn't FaceTime somebody, I would really only know the people within walking distance of me, if that. And that is just wild to think that it's so accessible. So inherently, to first kind of state, I don't think social media is bad. I don't think it's toxic in its nature. But what I will say, and what I noticed, was that I had a very toxic relationship with social media. And that was like before the breakup. I don't think I had like a really healthy relationship with social media. And this year apart, I think what I've realized is that is two things. One, I think social media allows, how do I say this? Naturally, and I think, okay, so we'll get off the easy topic first, because I think that one's more obvious, is that it creates this really unrealistic expectation or image of oneself, right? Because everyone's only posting the great things that happen to them most of the time. I'm speaking generally. People only post what's great and what's amazing, what's kind of showy, their highs in life. And I think because it's so saturated with those kind of posts, that it makes having a bad day feel abnormal, right? It makes having like a tough moment, or maybe like a very mundane life, like a mundane Saturday, feel like it's the worst thing in the world, because everybody is going out to brunch, or people are going on trips, or people are doing parties or gatherings or whatever. And I think being oversaturated with that level of positivity, that kind of content, I think inherently can make someone feel bad, like it did for me. So maybe I should just speak from my opinion. But seeing all that made me feel really bad, because I think it kind of made me want to conjure this false image that I live this like amazing life, and that I get to do cool things. Like I used to work in corporate event planning, and whenever we're at a fancy place, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna take a nice photo, because look at me, I'm in like a Napa Valley at this pretty winery. Look at me, what I'm doing. Meanwhile, I'm stressed out to high heavens because of all the other crazy things that are going on, but no one's gonna know that. You know what I mean? And so I think that was just an example where I was kind of giving in to this idea that like nothing's wrong, so I'm just going to post what's amazing in my life. And I think on the receiving end, where I saw some, happy posts, and I would be like, I see all these people going out to brunch on a Saturday, and I'm still in bed. That makes me feel bad, and that really kind of highlighted, or was amplified during the quarantine, where I was quarantining up in San Francisco in my apartment alone, sad, brokenhearted, and I saw people posting like, "Oh, I'm at brunch." And I'm like, "Why wasn't I invited?" Or why not? Why am I not doing anything? And it just kind of made me feel inherently bad. I don't think I need to kind of explain anymore, because I think we've all been there, and that's a very normal response. But I think that's kind of where it kind of highlighted that I didn't have the best relationship with social media, because seeing that would affect me. And it's nothing about the post. It's all about how I responded to it. And I think that response, that natural instinct of like, is something that we can kind of relate to. Because I tell me if you've never felt that way. I would love to hear if you've never felt that response, that like, oh, I feel like maybe I should be doing something more, which not always a bad thing, but I think at times it can be negative. And anyway, we'll move on. The other thing that I noticed, so number 2, was that I think it really makes, and it kind of ties in with the first point, I guess this is maybe just like an extension of that, is that social media, I think, makes it really easy for us to compare ourselves with one another. And I think it's in a way where it's not beneficial. Very rarely do I think comparing ourselves is ever beneficial. It's like somebody else. I don't think that's ever like a good thing to do. But I think social media definitely does it. And there's this quote that I've learned over the year where it's, there's no greater sense of urgency than feeling like you're behind. And let me tell you, I felt that so hard during this quarantine or during this past year on LinkedIn, which is kind of random. I never really thought that LinkedIn would make me feel any sort of negative way, but it did. Because in last year, I was laid off and I was unemployed for about 3 to 4 months. And that was like kind of like at the beginning of the layoffs back in the States. It was like March. So it was like I was part of the early wave that was laid off. It wasn't for a laid off, like out of a job during the peak of like craziness where everyone's like, what are we going to do? I don't know. There's no toilet paper or things like that. And I remember going onto LinkedIn to start applying for jobs, start seeing what's out there. But seeing other people's job posting or updates saying that I got this job or I'm now promoted to this company or I'm still here, that caused me so much that caused such a negative response in my body. I felt so unaccomplished and insignificant off of LinkedIn, which I have never experienced that, nor would I ever think that LinkedIn was going to affect me to that degree, but it did, because I was constantly comparing myself to other people. I was looking on their LinkedIn profiles, comparing it to mine, and being like, what do they have that I don't? Or why did I pick this over that? And it just completely enabled this quarter life crisis and identity crisis I truly was having last year in a really negative way. I think in some cases, it could be very motivating. It could be a good kick in the ass. But for this one, it did nothing but really tear down my self-confidence. I felt really insecure. I felt really self-conscious. And it just made me feel like, what am I doing? Or what did I do for the past few years? And it was just such a negative experience overall. And so going to when I removed myself from other platforms, LinkedIn was kind of like the last one I would say that I removed myself from. And when I did, I kid you not, I felt so good. There was such a weight of stress that was taken off of me because I wasn't constantly looking at other people's LinkedIn posts, or I wasn't constantly looking up at other people's LinkedIn profiles to where it would be in a position that would make me feel bad or make me question. Like I stopped questioning, I stopped second guessing when I removed myself from LinkedIn because I didn't have any other point of reference. There was no person I was comparing myself to. I was just applying, or I was just doing what I wanted to do because it felt right. And that mindset and that energy was so much more beneficial for me. It was a much healthier way to kind of go about, applying for jobs and all that when I kind of removed myself from LinkedIn. And even after I got a job, I still removed myself from LinkedIn because it went to my enigma. I liked that no one knew what I was up to. Part of it was to be a little petty. Oh, actually, I don't even think that's petty. But part of it was because I didn't want my mutual friends with my ex to know what I was up to. Because when I block somebody, you don't get to passively see what's going on in my life. And I think that has been something that has become a very a new gatekeeping of mine, is good things or life updates. Because I'm not posting it on social media, I don't want something like a job to be just free knowledge, which, since then I've posted on it, but also since then I've blocked certain people off of LinkedIn. And so, I kind of lost my train of thought there, but, I think that it just, going back to the comparison, yeah, LinkedIn really made me realize how much I was comparing myself. And that quote of "there's no greater sense of urgency than feeling like you're behind" could not have been more felt in that moment. And so, yeah, that is how I felt about social media. So that's pretty much how those are like the main points, main learning lessons, I guess, from my time away from social media was that, kind of this like enigma experience allowed me to realize who I really cared about, who was a part of my inner circle that I was checking up with, vice versa, who cared about me and also who didn't care about me in terms of like checking in with me. I think it really kind of benefited my relationships with my family, with my friends, especially because there was more work to be done. I really had to actively work to know what was going on in my friend's life, catch up with people. And I think to that, I'm really grateful for that experience. And I really do think that's probably like the greatest, maybe like the most rewarding product of me being away from social media for, over a year is that I feel like I have a stronger relationship with my friends. And I think it is coupled because we were in a quarantine, because we're going through a pandemic. I think our perspective on our relationships have changed in that sense. But, I think I had to put in more work because I didn't know what they're doing, And I think I just feel less stressed because I'm not comparing myself to other people. And I think that has been such a huge weight lifted. This past year, I feel like I really just needed to focus on myself. And I think not having social media to be a distraction in a way that it may have made me feel negative about what I was going through or negative about myself, I think was really, really helped aid in my growth this year and the work that I did on myself. And just overall, I think social media being out of my life has really helped my mental health, ultimately, is what I would say. And that's just my experience because, again, I didn't have like the most healthy relationship when it came to social media. And I do feel like I'm better now. I do feel like I have a better approach when it comes to social media because in no way do I hate social media or do I despise social media. Like, I'm not one of those people that like despise it. I just have no desire to really be on any of the apps. And I don't really have any desire to, I guess, to answer the first question I posed was, will I come back to social media? I don't know. Not anytime soon. And it's past, I guess a part of me still likes being this enigma. But also I've kind of gotten used to life without social media. And I think, how I view social media now, I just have no real desire to go back to, any of the apps. I don't have any desire to re-download Instagram. I will say that I've been on LinkedIn more. And I think my relationship with LinkedIn in that sense has been better to where if it's starting to really negatively impact me, I literally just, I stop going on it. I log out and I move on. And so I have been kind of incorporating certain social media platforms back. LinkedIn is one of them. Twitter, I really just use to keep up to date with whether or not there's an earthquake or my WWE knowledge, which if you didn't know, that is a guilty pleasure of mine. And so those are really the only two things that I've used. I don't really use Facebook that often. I do check it every now and then because my mom will send me, certain messages. And so she wants me to check there. So I will look at Facebook every now and then, but I never really used Facebook since graduating college. And even then, I don't think I use Facebook that often. And Instagram. I don't know when I would go back to Instagram. Instagram, I think, is the one that really caused a lot of anxiety for me when I think about re-downloading it because I think that temptation to want to find out what is going on with my ex is still kind of lingering even a year later. And it's normal that that kind of feeling would linger because there's no time limit to when it should have gone away or will go away for that matter. But Instagram is the one where that's more of a firm, no thank you, I have no desire to. The other platforms, there's just no desire. There's no need. I don't know. I just, it's not my thing right now. And I don't want to write it off completely. So that's why the accounts are still there. But yeah, I just have I don't feel charged to get back into social media. And post about it. But I have fun on the platforms where I'm not seeing anybody that I'm following, which is why I think I'm okay with YouTube and I'm okay with TikTok, because I'm not following people I know. Like, I'm just following people that I find entertaining. And so I think I have like those kind of apps where I'm not seeing anybody that I know, to where I can then be exposed to then like maybe compare myself to. That's not there anymore. So that's not on those apps. And so I feel pretty good about that. But yeah, so in a long-winded answer, will I come back to social media? Instagram, definitely not. That's a definite no for foreseeable future. The other ones, I have no issues with going back to them. I just have no desire right now. And I think especially kind of in where I'm at in my life right now, social media is a very, 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 very low priority. Besides, growing this YouTube channel and TikTok, apparently I have a potential to maybe grow, or I'm getting more followers, which is cool. And so that's that. That's how I really feel about social media. So I think that kind of wraps up this this episode. Sorry. I think this wraps up this episode of Lessons After My Quarter Life Crisis. And I'm trying to think. I really, I can't believe it's been over a year. Maybe I've rambled in this podcast or in this episode because I am still processing. And so that is my thoughts, feelings, and stories of 1 year after taking quite a long social media break. I think in relation to people, in relation to the current generation, a year away from social media is, I think, quite a long time. But what do I know? It's been a year. That pretty much wraps up this episode of Lessons After My Quarter Life Crisis. I hope you enjoyed this one, whether you're watching or listening to it. Definitely let me know in the comments, or share your